Hello there, my name's Nathan Price, Head of English here at MTW. A few weeks ago, we had a really fantastic phonics workshop, which lots of parents came to and learned a lot about the process of teaching phonics here at MTW and how they can support their children on their reading and writing and phonics journey as they spend time here at MTW. I wanted to share that workshop with a wider audience to make sure that all the parents here had the opportunity to learn a bit more about how they can support their children with reading and writing during the time here at MTW. So I'm going to share the slides, talk to you about what we do here during our phonics lessons, and also what some of the terminology you might hear your children coming home with after their phonics lessons, and might be a little bit unusual, but hopefully a bit more knowledgeable. The more knowledgeable you become, the better you'll be able to help your children in their phonics. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll work our way through the presentation so that you can learn everything it is to know about phonics here at MTW. So bear with me a second. So what is phonics is going to be our first question. That's really interesting. What is phonics? It's something that when I was at school we didn't learn about. I know I'm getting on a bit, but we didn't learn about that when I was at school. But the first question is, what is phonics? So hopefully that is now sharing with you. Phonics is a way of teaching children how to read and write. It helps children to hear, identify and use different sounds that distinguish one word from another in the English language. Let's go through the technical vocab. Okay, we'll go through that technical vocab. It's really important because that will pop up a lot during today's workshop, but also during your children's lessons. So a phoneme, this is the sound we hear. That is the sound we hear when we're talking. The sounds that we hear are called phonemes. Graphemes is a visual representation of that sound. Okay. So the first thing we'll teach your children is single letter sounds. So that's the letter S making a S sound, letter A making a sound, letter T making a T sound. Then we'll move on to things called digraphs. Now, digraphs are two letters making one sound, like in the digraph A. Apologise for my writing. In the word rain is a digraph. Okay. And so on. Trigraph is three letters making one sound. Okay, so a digraph is two letters making one sound. A trigraph is three letters making one sound. Like in the word light, IGH makes an I sound. Okay, that's a trigraph. Quadgraph is four letters making one sound. They're a bit more unusual. So they like in the word for the number 8. You can see it there. It's 8, and that contains a quadgraph. So segment is when we break up a word into their sounds, like the word cat, at. That's when we segment it. We break that word up into each individual sound. We blend, we put the sounds of the word back together. So when I segment it, at, I read each individual sound, at. I then blend it back together, at, cat. That's segmenting and blending. So let's move on. So we start phonics with environmental sounds. We ask children to go out into the environment and identify each sound they can hear. Can they hear a helicopter? Can they hear a cow? Can they hear a river? Can they hear children playing? And we ask them to spot each individual sound. We might get different instruments and shake those instruments and see if they can identify which instrument that is. We do that both physically, but also using videos to see if the children can spot what things make each individual sound. That's how we start off our phonics journey here at MTW, and that'll be what we'll be learning in FS1. And you can spot one of the videos we've got here is an environmental sound game. So we'll ask children to identify the different sounds that they can hear in this video and see if they can spot each picture and identify which picture is making that sound. So that's obviously the BAL number 1. Okay, that's how we'll start off. As you move into phase 2, into FS2, children will be introduced to phase 2, which is the single letter sounds that I mentioned before, moving on to these early digraphs here. So we start with sat, n, d, sat pin as it's called, and that's the order that we teach our sounds in. Okay, and they're taught in a particular order so that we can introduce certain words quite early on. So we start with sat and p, and then we go to pat and pin, and we talk about at and things like that. And what I'll do is I'll share the links to that show you the videos on how to pronounce each one of those sounds, but I'll also share a resource with you that gives you the specific way to form your mouth, your lips, your tongue, and where they should be to be able to pronounce that pure sound. And it's really important that we are able to do that. As we move into phase 3, which they'll also learn in FS2 if your child starts their phonics journey in FS with us. Now, we might be learning this in year 2, or we might be learning this in year 1, but they still go in the same order, and we still learn them in the same order and teach them in the same way, regardless of where your child is in the school. They still follow the same phonics scheme of work in the same order. So this is phase 3, which is full of mostly digraphs, but there are some trigraphs in there as well, and also some tricky words. Now, tricky words are words that the children really need to know to be able to read simple sentences or for their early books to make sense. And we introduce those, and those tricky words are also known as high frequency words, words that children will need to read a lot for their early sentences to make sense and their early books to make sense. So things like is, I, and the. And the reason they're called tricky words is because they don't use the phonics that the children have learned at that stage. They might use the phonics later on, that they're taught later on in their phonics journey, but at that stage, they do not know the phonics that would be required to read those words, if at all. Then on to phase 5. Now, this is taught in year 1, usually, but also in year 2. And this contains more digraphs and some alternative pronunciations. Now, I know you can see that that's a single letter sound, but it's not, because it's not an I like it would be in phase 3. It's an I, an I. And what you can see, it's got the same picture there as the original I has over here, because it's the same sound. It's an alternative spelling for the same sound. Same for A. It's not an A like they were taught in phase 3. It's an A, like in the word apron. Okay. And like E, like in the word enormous. Okay. And then we've got the split vowel digraphs as well. And we've still got some tricky words. Now, for example, I'm going to teach you about segmenting here. Segmenting is where we read a word and we break it up into each individual sound. So this one is k, at, k, at. And what I'm doing there, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm putting the sound buttons in. The sound buttons are the way that we identify each sound in a word there. So I'm going to use my laser pointer here. K, at, k, at, cat. And that's called segmenting, where we break a word up into each individual sound. Okay. Now this one is a bit tricky because it's got a digraph in there. So this was just single letter sounds. K, at. You can't quite see the highlighter there, but I'm trying to, I'll make the highlighter in black, so hopefully we can see it. K, at, cat. There we go. K, at, and they're the letter sounds for that. This one is f, I, sh, and these are called the sound buttons, or the dots and dashes that we put in there to underline each sound, which helps children with their early reading, their early segmenting. So this is f, I, sh, fish. Okay, this one is sh, I, p, ship. There we go. This one has got a digraph in the middle. Team. Okay. This one has got lots of single sounds and then a digraph in the middle. Eam. Now, when we introduce more sounds into a word, these children already know those sounds, but it's difficult for them to identify all the sounds in the word when it contains lots of sounds. So we spend a lot of time introducing the children to words that are longer but contain sounds that they already know. Okay, because it's the skill there is to identify all the individual sounds that are in the word. So they already know the st, sound, but when we add more of them together, it becomes trickier for them to read. So we spend a bit of time doing that. Now, that's an even longer word, but containing all the sounds that they already know. E, t, I, ng. There we go. That's quite easy for children to read once they've got to the hang, sorry, of identifying all the sounds in longer words. And this is an example of children using a phonetically plausible attempt at writing a word. I wonder if you can have a go at writing that word. It's using all the wrong graphemes for the different phonemes, but it is phonetically plausible. Okay, so that word, if we sound it out, I'll put the sound buttons in to help you, is O, T, A, T, O. Now, it's not spelt right, but it is using all phonetically appropriate sounds. So it is phonetically decodable. Your teacher, your pupil's teacher would be able to read that if they wrote that down. It might take a bit of time, but what it does is it shows you that really the English language is very complicated. We have lots of different ways of writing the same sound, especially when the children get older and they've learned multiple ways of writing the same sound. But if children are using the correct phonics, then that's really, really good because they're starting to identify the sounds. Now, as they get older, we want them to use the correct grapheme to represent each sound. But having a go lower down the school using the phonetically plausible attempt is great. Okay, and it's also gives you an idea of what in year 1 and year 2 the children will be doing during their phonics screen, where they'll be reading alien words which don't make sense but do use phonics, and the children will need to use their phonics to be able to read these alien words. Okay, now blending, we practice this in lots of different ways, but we might show children the picture and say the word at, and see if they can recognize which one it is, or each, or smile, or e. We might say those words like that and see if the children can put them back together. So the way teachers might do that is they might introduce it by going to the children in your children in their class. Come on, children, let's sit on the at. Sit on the at, or go and get your ags or your snack. So it sounds very, very robotic, but it helps the children to practice their blending because they'll in their head they'll have to go at mat, and they start to make those links between the sounds and the words and start to understand that blending and segmenting work together and something that they can do to both read and write. So your teachers will do that, and that's something you can do as well. You might tell your child that we're going to the shops. Can you come with me to the shops? Okay. Or shall we have some lunch? Lunch. That's a tricky one, that is. So that is one way you can do it. Okay. We might also ask them to hold a sentence. We might get the children to practice a sentence during our phonics to help them to remember sentence structure and have a go at retaining a sentence, learning how to retain a sentence so that then they can write that. So it'll be very simple to start off with. It might simply be, I can run, lower down the school. That might be the sentence we ask the children to remember. We'll practice it in lots of different ways. And I must apologise for the writing because I'm using the highlighter tool, but I can run. We might say that sentence there. We might ask them to say, remember that sentence and then have a go at writing it. And we start small, but we obviously elongate that sentence as the children progress through the school and they learn to retain longer sentences. Okay, I must apologise. My internet went off during that part of the video, but hopefully you understood it all. How do we assess phonics at MTW? Well, it's a one-to-one assessment every half term that your child will do with their class teacher. Now, that seems a lot, but it helps us to identify gaps and make sure that we're providing children with phonics that fills in every single gap. We don't want any children going right to the end with lots of gaps through their assessment. Okay, so we can see here that we use different colours for each half term that we do it. and then we can track progress through the phonics scheme. And every child in FS2 in year 1 and year 2 will have had that assessment done during their time here at MTW. In May, June, in year 1 and 2, pupils will complete the phonics screen, which, like I said earlier, is them reading a range of real and alien words to show that they understand and have retained all the different scales of phonics. So they know all their different graphemes and phonemes. They are able to blend and segment and able to read a range of words using all the different graphemes that they've been taught. And that will happen. And the tricks of the trade that I want to share with you is repeat, repeat, repeat. At the start of every phonics lesson, we will review old sounds that they've learned. Okay. We will go over them again and again and again. Okay. To make sure that children retain them. And when we teach the new sounds, we obviously revisit old sounds when we do our blending and segmenting. We don't just ignore when we've taught it before. We go back, we keep sounding that out and keep making those links and keep pointing at those sounds. Make it fun. We can make the phonics really, really fun by guessing, by doing it in sand, by doing it in paint, by doing it in the bath, getting the children to sound out the letters using magnetic letters. We can also sound out words like I've talked to already. We're going to go and sit in the k, ah. We're going to the p, ah. Sound it out and see if the children can guess where you're going. Okay. Use a sound map in writing. When children are doing writing, we're going to share with you the resource that is the sound mat. Use that. Help the children to use that when they're writing. Don't ask them to remember all the sounds when they're an early writer. Use visual aids to help them. So we'll give you a sound mat. We'll share the resources with you so that you can use the same sound mat that we use at school when the children are working at home. Hint, don't help. Okay. Don't tell the child the spelling for or which phonic which grapheme it is. Give them a hint. If a child wants to write the word stray, I found a stray cat, let's say, tell them, they go, which A is it? You go, it's the A as in day. Let's say they're writing, I've got a big brain. And they say, which A is it, Mum? You don't say, oh, it's AI. Say it's the A as in rain. Okay. And another thing that you can do to help is put the dots and dashes in. That's really helpful. Even if they're writing a word, put the dots and dashes in there and it'll help them to think about the sounds that they might need. Okay. And the final thing is, if you want to make a request, use this QR code on the screen and it'll take you to a link and fill in a form and you can tell us how you've enjoyed this workshop, or you can ask for some more information if you need to. Now, your teachers are all very knowledgeable in phonics. It's very important that all our staff are well versed in our phonics scheme of work, and they are incredibly knowledgeable. So feel free to ask any question to them, or come to Mr. Price if you see me around school, and I'll be willing to have that conversation with you and to share all the information we might need to share. But also, if you need any requests, let us know. What I will be sharing with you is a range of resources. You'll get the sound mat, and we're sharing that with you. And also, I'll be sharing a pronunciation guide, which shows you how to form your letters, where to put your tongue and your teeth, and where your mouth should be and your lips. And it's really important to help you to pronounce those pure letters as they're intended. Now, I totally understand. Phonics is quite tricky. It's quite hard to get your head around. And even for native speakers, I have to work incredibly hard when I'm teaching phonics not to use my accent and say sounds incorrectly. We all have accents, even us native speakers have our accents, and I have to work around that. So we totally empathise that not naturally can we all say some of the sounds that we need to when we're teaching phonics, but we can work together to ensure that each child learns the sounds, learns to say them properly, and learns to use them in their writing as best as we can, as best as they can. So we're going to work collaboratively at school. The teachers are working very hard, and know your children are working very hard. And I know you parents want to work really hard to support your children as well. So we really appreciate that here at the MTW family. But we're on a journey, and I know that you want to support us and your children on their phonics journey during their time here. So thank you for watching the workshop. Let me know if you have any questions. Please fill out the workshop feedback form, and thank you for joining. Bye-bye.